Thank you, Stephanie. Henry Ford said, "Thinking is the hardest work there is," which is probably the reason so few engage in it. Thomas Edison said, 5% of the people think, 10% of the people think they think, and the other 85% would rather die than think. Then it is much more difficult to do forward thinking. Therefore, we must be prepared for struggles and obstacles on the road of forward thinking. Ms. Rachel Hayton, doctoral student of the Upper Department, is about to share with us what struggles and obstacles may lie ahead of us.
Thank you, Daniel. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. If I get too loud, just let me know. I sometimes tend to yell. I teach 6th grade and you have to talk over kids. So you know what I'm talking about. This morning we've had a lot of talk about what forward thinking is. We've had this idea that we can come up with something, we can take it to a group, and it's going to fly. But I get to be the negative side, and we're going to talk about the challenges that you might face. So think to that moment where you have come up with an idea, and at home you're sitting there at night and you go, this is the best idea, it is going to change our organization. You walk into your building, you go to your group, you go into the conference, and you tell everybody. And then there are crickets. We've had that moment, right? Okay? So we have to think, where do we get past that cricket moment? We believe, we have that fundamental feeling that this is going to be the best thing that we can do. Where do we go from there? So I want you to keep this quote in mind. Napoleon Hill said, "Where there is no struggle, there is no strength." So, yes, there are going to be problems. Yes, there are going to be challenges that you're going to face. But you're going to come out on the end, and you're going to be so much stronger for it. Keep that in mind. At that cricket moment, you know, you're ready for battle. Somehow you're going to have to convince your group. You're going to have all these obstacles that you might have to face. You're going to come out better for it. And I want us to think of this negative side in more of a positive way. I want us to think about, yes, we're going to have these issues. We're going to have these things that we have to overcome. But how can we do that and make our idea better? So going into this, we have to understand and realize we are going to face challenges. We face challenges and conflicts in our everyday life. So go ahead and know that now. It may not seem like it at the time. There may be a doomsday umbrella over you, and you may be thinking, this is going to be the end. But know that it will strengthen you in time. But you have to see these in a positive way as opportunities instead of stumbling blocks. Because at that moment, when you decide that this is a way to make it better, then your idea will proceed. So we have some common challenges that we face with any change or with any idea that we're trying to implement in an organization. Your idea may not be shared. We can all think of that. That's our cricket moment. Then the idea, people may be resistant to it. You know in life that uncertainty is the only thing that you can count on. Time will be a factor, and then there will be prior assumptions that you'll have to overcome as well. So I lumped the first two together because they kind of go hand in hand. First off, your idea may not be shared by your team. And in that same sense, your team may be resistant to it. Now, as a teacher, and even if you're not in the education field, you're probably going to have some background knowledge in what I'm getting ready to talk about. I can think of one really great example of an idea that was brought forth that was not shared and was brought with a ton of resistance. And that idea is the new team model. In 2011, teachers were brought with this idea that they were going to make the evaluation of teachers much more rigorous. They were going to go in and they were going to look at 12 indicators of instruction alone. And they were going to say, we know these are what you need to do to be a great teacher. And every teacher that I talked to went, whoa. There was feelings of offense, there was some anger, there was a whole lot of anxiety. Things that we really just went, why do we have to feel this way? We've had this other evaluation model. This evaluation model has been fine. Now you're going to change it and you're going to tell me that I have to do these 12 things in these 12 ways to be the best teacher in Tennessee. Well, that's what we had in our head. But what Tennessee did, and what I thought was a great forward-thinking strategy, is they went ahead and they brought this idea to the group. They brought it to all the teachers in Tennessee, all the administrators that were going to have to do this evaluation, and they let it sit for a second. They let people talk about it in districts, and they started to listen to the feedback. All that resistance and all that idea that wasn't shared, Tennessee took in. It wasn't immediate, but towards the spring, lots of ideas came around, and there were meetings, there were panel discussions, there were plenty of surveys sent to me by some lady in Nashville that I do not know, and we filled them out. We sent them back. And then Tennessee listened. And this year, there have been changes. Great teachers, those ones that were offended, they're being rewarded now. They have less things to do. Yes, there's still those 12 indicators, but we're not going over and over and over again with it and kind of beating a dead horse. You know, they're saying, good job, keep doing it. So I really think that's a great point with this forward thinking, is that it did take time, but Tennessee overcame the attitude by listening, by talking with teachers, talking with the people that were actually implementing this, those administrators that were running it, and they worked for the teachers instead of against them, and they worked with them to get that to happen. Now, the next thing we have to talk about is the unknown, because with a forward-thinking strategy, go back to yourself in there, you're walking into your boardroom, and you think that everybody's going to love what you're talking about. But, you know, in the back of your head, you have to know, you have to keep in mind, this may not go the way you want it to go. So remember, the uncertainty is the only certainty that there is. And we are not fortune tellers. When I taught 4th grade, I would teach about predicting strategies with reading. And I worked in Morristown, and there was this lady, her name was Mrs. Lamar. And so that was what we called it. She had a crystal ball, and if you've driven down, I think 81, she's got a little sign, and you can see. And she was someone that thought that she could just see the future. And we would call it the Mrs. Lamar strategy, because that's what worked with my kids. But I always think back to that. And I always drove by and I wanted to go, well, I wonder what she would tell me. I wonder if I give her my $20, if she's going to tell me how to make things better, how I can think into the future and really make the decisions that I need to make. But I never did. I saved that $20. And so I just went ahead in my head and knew that something's always going to snag the best laid plans. In the 90s, Alanis Morissette had a song called Ironic. Anyone familiar with that? And she goes, it's like rain on your wedding day. It's a flat tire when you're already late. That's what the unknown is in forward thinking. You're getting on your way and then something happens and boom, the bottom falls out. So as we're thinking about being forward thinkers and we have our idea, how are we going to overcome this uncertainty? What are we going to do that's going to get us past this roadblock, which is inevitable? And the concept here, I think to my husband, and I love him. If anyone knows him, please tell him that I do when I tell the story about him. My husband, because I love him, I can call him a nerd. And when I met him, I wasn't really aware of just the level that I was dealing with. But if you've seen The Big Bang Theory, there's Sheldon. He's not quite that bad. Okay, I did get him to marry me, so he can't be that bad. But my husband has this very analytical way about him. And he sets things out, and we have a budget, and we follow that budget. And I'm not that way. So we might go off budget. Or I might say, let's go on a trip. And he's like, well, I don't know if we have the money. And I kind of just do it anyway, just to kind of mess with him. But that's what we do. But anyway, what he does is he overcomes it. He deals with me and my insanity. And I always wondered, why do you deal with me? How are you putting up with this? Because your personality is not a personality that's going to deal with it. So I started watching him. And every day when he would come home, he would go to his computer and he would sit down. He would get on there. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I got to check the game. And I realized it. My husband is a gamer. He plays these multiplayer online role-playing games, and he plays them for hours. And what he does is for the first 3 hours of sitting down at night, he's sitting there and he's talking about, what's your character going to do? What weapons are you going to give him so that we can beat this boss? And hey man, and he gets on those little headset. It's very funny. But he gets on there and he's like, what are we going to do? What boss are we going to fight? Okay, who do we need on our team? So they're doing this planning and they're doing this thing for this unknown challenge that they're going to have later. But they're spending the time as a team working, thinking of all of the scenarios that could go on. And then when they go in, it really only takes them like an hour to play the game. It says 3 hours ahead of time that he's sitting there, doing all the planning. So I thought, there's so many of these people. And they're all around us, okay? I admit I played for a little bit. I had to understand it. But all these people are there. What if we tap into that as a way to overcome the uncertainties that are going to be in our forward thinking? Let's find those people in our organizations, and they can do that work for us because they're great at it. It's something they thrive on. They go home and do it. Why not give them the opportunity to do it here too? Put that idea into practice for money instead of just for fun. And I think that's why my husband deals with me, is because he plays those games. He knows this is going to happen. So I think he already has in his head, well, she's probably going to want to go on vacation, so I should probably go ahead. And he has this whole idea planned out down another path. But if you know those people, or if you can find those people, they may not advertise themselves. He doesn't to his job. Use those people to overcome those uncertainties. Now, another idea that we might have that would be a problem is the time. Stephanie talked about time and said you can't be a forward thinker all the time. And researchers did a study, and they found out that senior managers only get to spend 3% of their time on forward thinking. Think about all the other things that they have to do. 3%. Where are they doing this? Are they doing it while they're brushing their teeth? Are they doing it while they're driving to work? Are they doing it right before they go to bed? Are they doing it during their lunch break? It's such a small fraction. When does it happen? Well, what they're also doing is they're finding people like my husband to be the forward thinker. They're finding people to do this for them so that they don't have to really feel bad about it. And they're pushing on that way. And finally, as we wrap it up, we have to go with the idea of assumptions. Because that's kind of the elephant in the room, where people keep those to themselves. So take a look at this with me. If others tell us something, we make assumptions. And if they don't tell us something, we make assumptions to fulfill our need to know and to replace the need to communicate. Even if we hear something and we don't understand, we make assumptions about what it means, and then we believe those assumptions. We make all sorts of assumptions because we don't have the courage to ask questions. Have you had a moment like that, where you don't really understand, but instead of taking the second to stretch your arm up into the air, you just go ahead and try to rationalize it for yourself? As human beings, we want to rationalize things. We want to understand. But sometimes we lack the courage to do that. We lack the courage to step up and say, I need to know more. Apply that to your organization. Apply that to the people that you work with, and realize that they may not have the courage, they may not have the inner strength to raise their hand and ask. And be proactive on that. Know what your group needs to know. Be ready to go. You've got this idea. Tell them everything that you possibly can. And then, instead of leaving the boardroom and turning your back, be prepared to engage in conversations. Set aside blocks of time. Come up with some sort of system to get their input, to get their feedback. And then you can go and communicate with them that way. My principals use email almost exclusively. And it's a great tool, Make sure people know that you're open to it. Don't leave them to assume that you want to help them. Make sure that you vocalized it. So, coming back to this, I've talked through several of the challenges that you're going to face with your forward-thinking idea. Remember that it may be a struggle or seem that way at some time, but towards the end, it is going to become a strength for you. Your organization will be stronger. Your idea might morph a little bit, but it's going to end up being much better in the end. Know that you will face challenges, and they're going to strengthen your team and your project, but you have to see them as opportunities. The moment you see them as a shutdown, they will shut it down. Go into your idea with that point of view, and you should be much more successful. I think that we're ready for a small break. So at this time, I'll release you, and thank you so much.